Okay, so today we are learning about the square root method. And our essential question, how do you solve using the square root method? You're going to make your own notes today. There's not a note template to go with it. Everybody should be writing down their essential question in their notebook. Okay, so basically to use the square root method, first of all, there can be no bx term. There can be no bx term. So I can't have a term with x squared and a term with x. If I do, then I cannot use the square root method. So what you're going to see in all these equations is that bx is missing. And then all we have to do to use the square root method is use inverse operations. Okay? All we have to do is use inverse operations. Okay, so let's just start basic. We've previously looked at this problem. And we talked about that x could be what? It could be 2 and it could be negative 2, right? So when we look at this, to solve for x, all we have to do is cancel out our exponent. So what is the opposite of squaring something? Square rooting it. That's right. So we're going to square root both sides. And we have to remember that we want the positive and the negative value of the square root of 4. So maybe we should add that to our steps as well. So for step 3, one thing we need to remember is we need to make sure we remember to do the positive and the negative square root. We want to get the positive and the negative value of the square root. So for this very simple problem, there are 2 solutions. And just remember that solutions, roots, zeros, and what all mean the same thing? What, Amelia? X-intercept, right? All 4 of these words are referring to the same thing. So our solutions for this one are 2 and negative 2. Okay, here's another one. 3 minus 5x squared equals negative 9. Okay, notice in this equation there is no bx. There's no term with just an x, right? So all I have to do is inverse operations to solve for x. So what do you think we should cancel out first? What, Anna? The 3, right? It's just like a 2-step equation. How would I cancel out the 3? Subtract 3. Okay, that cancels out. And we get negative 5x squared equals what? Negative 12. Okay, now what should we do? Not yet, because what else do I still have there? I still have that negative 5, right? So we want to cancel out the negative 5 first by dividing. Okay. And that gives me x squared equals 12/5. I'm going to leave it as a fraction for right now. And then our last step would be to do what? Square root it. And not just square root it, but positive or negative the square root. Now this is easy because we're not having to add or subtract anything to it. So this is where we want to pick up our calculator. Okay, pick up, whoops, I don't want that on there. Okay, pick up your calculator. Now, positive or negative, this is going to make this actually really easy. I'm just going to put positive or negative, plus or minus. And so let's do the square root, second x squared. And then to type in 12/5, we just do 12 divided by 5. You can close the parentheses if you want or arrow out, but that's all we're doing. And so when we press enter, rounded to the hundredths place, it would be what? 1.55. So x equals positive or negative 1.55. If you wanted to write it as positive 1.55 and negative 1.55, that would be okay as well. But either way, they all mean the same thing. Questions? Okay, let's look at another one. 3 times x minus 2 squared equals 21. Okay, solving for x. What do you think we need to cancel out first? The 3, right? So that's kind of least attached. How am I going to cancel out the 3? Talk louder. Divide, right? This is 3 times. So the opposite is to divide. So that leaves me with x minus 2 squared equals 7. Now remember, we can't touch what's in parentheses until we have gotten rid of that exponent. So what's our next step? I can't hear you because you are muffled.
Try to get rid of the exponent.
How do we get rid of the exponent? What's the opposite of squaring something? Square rooting. This is just like we did last night. Or did you say that and I didn't hear you? Okay. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So we're going to take positive or negative the square root. And so that leaves us with x minus 2 equals positive or negative the square root of 7. Okay. Now what? I could square root the 7, but is 7 a perfect square? No, so we're going to leave it as it is for right now. If I want to solve for x, what else do I need to get rid of? The 2. How would I cancel it out? Add 2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And so what we have now is we have positive the square root of 7 plus 2. And we have negative the square root of 7 plus 2. So let's pick up our calculators, and we're going to calculate each one separately. Okay. So I've got the square root of 7 plus 2. What are you getting for that? 4.65, okay, I agree. So x equals 4.65. And the second solution, 0.65, okay, let's just negative 0.65. Okay, very good. Any questions on that? So that was very similar to what we were doing with completing the square. Okay, let's do another one. 4x squared minus 6 equals 42. See if you can start that one on your own. 4x squared minus 6 equals 42. All we're doing is inverse operations. Your first step should be to add 6. Then you should be dividing by 4. And then the last step is to do plus or minus the square root. So positive or negative, the square root of 12 is going to be our answer. So positive or negative, 3.46. Yes? Okay. Because I do mess up sometimes. Question, we're going to do one more. Okay. 1/5 times x minus 4 squared equals 6. Do we remember how to cancel out a fraction coefficient? Because it's kind of like a coefficient. How would you cancel out that 1/5? Multiply by the 5. Multiply by the reciprocal. So all you have to do is multiply both sides by 5 and then go from there. See if you can finish it from there. Remember, if it's not a perfect square, wait to take the square root of it until you know what you are going to be adding or subtracting. Your next step should have been to take the square root. And then you should be adding 4 to both sides. And so the two parts that you have to calculate is positive the square root of 30 plus 4 and negative the square root of 30 plus 4. So are you able to get 9.48? And negative 1.48? Okay. Why? Because we take the square root, because the opposite of squaring something is the square root.